Hello there everyone. Welcome to my channel Exploring Africa View. We bring you amazing content about Africa. Today we will be talking about the life of Dr. Francis Kwame Nkrumah, the first Prime Minister and President of Ghana, a country in West Africa. Please do well to like, comment and subscribe for more amazing videos. Let's get right to it. Dr. Francis Kwame Nkrumah was a Ghanaian politician, political revolutionary and Pan-Africanist. Historically, he served as the Prime Minister of the Gold Coast from 1952 until 1957, and then the first Prime Minister of Ghana from 1957, and the first President after the country gained independence from Britain. Kwame Nkrumah was born on Tuesday 21 September 1909 in Nkroful, Gold Coast, now current Ghana, although Nkroful was a small village in the Nzima area, in the southwest of the Gold Coast. His father, named Opanyan Kofi Nyanan Galoma, did not live with the family, but worked in Half-Assini, where he pursued his goldsmith business until his death. Kwame Nkrumah was raised by his mother Elizabeth Nyanaba as her only child and his extended family, who lived together traditionally and had more distant relatives often visiting. He lived a carefree childhood, spent in the village and nearby sea. He attended an elementary school run by Catholic Mission at Half-Assini, where he proved an adept student. He progressed through the proposed 10-year elementary program in just 8 years. In 1925, he was the student teacher in the school and was baptized into the Catholic faiths. He was soon noticed for his brilliant brightness by Reverend Alec Garden Fraser, principal of the Government Training College in the Gold Coast capital, Accra. Fraser arranged for Nkrumah to train as a teacher at his school. Over there at the school, Columbia-educated Deputy Headmaster Kwegier Agri exposed him to the ideas of Marcus Garvey and W.B. Du Bois. It was by exposure to these knowledge Nkrumah coined the ethic that only when the black and African race governed itself could there truly be harmony and freedom. After obtaining his teacher's certificate from the Prince of Wales College at Achimota in 1930, Nkrumah was given a teaching post at the Roman Catholic Primary School in Elmina in 1931. After a year there, he was made headmaster of the school in Axum. In Axum he started to get involved in politics and founded the Nzima Literary Society. In 1933, he was appointed a teacher at the Catholic Seminary at Amisano. Nkrumah had heard journalist and future Nigerian President Nnamdi Azikiwe speak while a student at Achimota. The two met, and Azikiwe's influence increased Nkrumah's interest in black nationalism. At this moment Nkrumah decided to further his education. Yielding to the advice of Azikiwe, he enrolled at the University of Lincoln, Chester County, Pennsylvania. According to historian John Henrik Has Clark in his article on Nkrumah's American sojourn, the influence of the 10 years that he spent in the United States had a lingering effect on the rest of his life. Having short funds for end meets despite having a scholarship to study at the university, he did menial jobs on roles such as wholesaler of fish and poultries, cleaner, and dishwasher. Nkrumah completed a Bachelor of Arts degree in Economic and Sociology in 1939. He was appointed an assistant lecturer in philosophy. In 1939 Nkrumah enrolled at the Lincoln Seminary. In 1942 he was initiated into the Mu chapter of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity at Lincoln University. Nkrumah gained a Bachelor of Theology degree from Lincoln. He earned from Penn the following year a Master of Arts degree in philosophy and a Master of Science in Education. Nkrumah was an activist student, organizing a group of expatriate African students in Pennsylvania and building it into the African Student Association of America and Canada. Becoming its president, some members felt that the group should aspire for each colony to gain independence. Nkrumah urged a Pan-Africa conference held in New York in 1944, which urged the United States, at the end of the Second World War, to help ensure Africa becomes developed and free. He adopted the forename Francis while at the Amisano Seminary. In 1945 he took the name Kwame Nkrumah. Inspired to further his education in London after the Second World War, Nkrumah arrived in London 1945. He then enrolled at the London School of Economics as a PhD candidate in anthropology. He withdrew after one term and the next year enrolled at University College London, with the intent to write a philosophy dissertation on knowledge and logical positivism. After being away for 12 years pursuing education abroad, in 1946 Nkrumah returned back to the Gold Coast. The then Constitution of the Gold Coast gave Africans a majority on the Legislative Council for the first time, seen as a major step towards self-government. hence prompting the creation of the first political party, the United Gold Coast Convention UGCC, which was led by Nkrumah. He began work at the party headquarters in Salpan on December 29, 1947, where he worked as a general secretary. Nkrumah quickly submitted plans for branches of the UGCC to be established colony-wide and for strikes if necessary to gain political ends. This activist stance divided the party's governing committee, which was led by J.B. Dankwa. Nkrumah embarked on a tour to gain donations for the UGCC and establish new branches. Tension began rising in January 1948. There was considerable discontent with colonial rules in the Gold Coast. This uprising sparked the February 28, 1948 Accra riots, which spread throughout the country. The colonial government assumed that UGCC was responsible for the unrest and riot. They then arrested 6 leaders including Nkrumah. They were all incarcerated in Kumasi. They were all freed in April 1948. Afterward, Nkrumah began funding the Ghana National College. His popularity began increasing with his founding of the Accra Evening News, which was not a party organ but was owned by Nkrumah and others. He also founded the Committee on Youth Organization as a youth wing for the UGCC. It soon broke away and adopted the motto self-government now. The CYO United Students, ex-servicemen and market women. Nkrumah recounted in his autobiography that he knew that a break with the UGCC was inevitable, and wanted the masses behind him when the conflict occurred. This began a new song of liberation, a new song of freedom. Beginning in April 1949, there was considerable pressure on Nkrumah from his supporters to leave the UGCC and form his own party. On June 12, 1949, he announced the formation of the Convention People's Party CPP, with the word convention chosen to carry the masses with us. The CPP adopted the red cockerel as its symbol, a familiar icon for local ethnic groups and a symbol of leadership, alertness and masculinity. Party symbols and colors red, white and green appeared on clothing, flags, vehicles and houses. CPP operatives drove red, white and green vans across the country, playing freedom music and rallying public support for the party, and especially for Nkrumah, who has been the most important person and face of the party. Because of the increasing desperation for freedom, the British convened a selected commission of middle-class Africans to draft a new constitution that would give the Gold Coast more self-government. Nkrumah saw even before the commission reports that its recommendation would fall short of full dominion status on citizens. He began organizing a positive action campaign. Nkrumah demanded a constituent assembly to write a constitution. The then governor, Charles Arden Clark, would not commit to this obligation and request. Nkrumah called for positive actions, with the unions beginning a general strike on January 8, 1950. The strike quickly led to violence, and Nkrumah was arrested with other prominent followers on January 22, and the evening's news owned by Nkrumah was banned. Nkrumah was sentenced to a total of 3 years in prison. He was incarcerated with common criminals in Accra's Fort James. During this time, while incarcerated, Nkrumah assistant, Kamla Agbelig Bedima, ran the CPP. While in prison, Nkrumah was able to influence the party through smuggled notes, written on toilet paper. The British prepared for an election for the Gold Coast under their new constitution. Nkrumah insisted that the CPP contest all seats. The situation between the colonials and party members had been calmer once Nkrumah was arrested. They both worked together to prepare electoral rolls. From prison, for a directly elected Accra seat, in February 1951 legislative election, the first general election to be held under universal franchise in colonial Africa, the CPP won 34 of the 38 seats contested on a party basis, with Nkrumah elected for Accra constituency. Nkrumah was released from prison on February 12. He received a rapturous reception from his followers. The following day he was sent for by Governor Arden Clark, urging him to form a government. Nkrumah faced several challenges as he assumed political office. He has never served in government, and needed to learn. The Gold Coast was composed of 4 regions, and several formed colonies amalgamated into one. Nkrumah sought to unite them under one nationality, and to bring the country to independence. Key to meeting the challenges was convincing the British that the CPP's programs were not only practical, but inevitable, prompting Governor Arden Clark to work more closely with him. Prior to the CPP taking office, British officials had prepared a 10-year plan for development, with demands for infrastructure improvement coming in from all over the colony. Nkrumah approved it in general, but halved the time to 5 years, because the colony was in good financial shape, with reserves from years of cocoa profits held in London. Modern trunk roads were built along the coast and within the interior, the rail system was modernized and expanded, modern water and sewer systems were installed in most towns. Good housing construction began across different towns. From 1951 to 1956, the numbers of pupils being educated at the colony's schools rose from 200,000 to 500,000. Nkrumah was named leader of government business in a cabinet chaired by Arden Clark. Quick progress was made, and in 1952, the governor withdrew from the cabinet, leaving Nkrumah as his prime minister. Nkrumah's retitling as prime minister had not given him additional power, so he sought constitutional reform that would lead to independence. In 1952 he consulted with the visiting colonial secretary, Oliver Littleton, who indicated that Britain would look favorably on further advancement. After much deliberations on opinions from councils and political parties on reform and self-governance, the result became clear. The following year a white paper on a new constitution, seen as the final step before independence, published in June 1953, the constitutional proposals were accepted both by the Assembly and by the British. Although there were opposition parties formed, like National Liberation Movement, their demands were for a federal rather than a unitary government, for independence, and for an upper house of parliament where chiefs and other traditional leaders could act as a counter to the CPP majority in the Assembly, which was opposed by Nkrumah and his party, the CPP. They drew considerable support in the Northern Territory and among the chiefs in Ashanti, who petitioned the British. Queen Elizabeth II, asking for a royal commission into what form of government the Gold Coast should have. This was however refused by her government, stating that such a commission should only be used if the people of the Gold Coast proved incapable of deciding their own affairs. Amid political violence by both parties, the CPP and NLM tried to reconcile their differences, but the NLM refused to participate in any committee with the CPP majority. However, on August 3, 1956, the Assembly voted for independence under the name Nkrumah had proposed, Ghana, for the newly formed country. On March 6, 1957, Ghana became the first Britain's African colonies to gain majority rule independence. On that day, Nkrumah stands before tens of thousands of supporters and proclaimed Ghana will be free forever, which sparked a wave of joy throughout the nation. He replaced the old flag of Gold Coast to the new flag of Ghana designed by Theodosia Oko, symbolizing African nationalism and abundance. Nkrumah was hailed Osajayafo, which means Redeemer, in the Akan language. As a monument to the new nation, Nkrumah opened Black Star Square near OSU Accra. This square would be used for national symbolism and mass patriotic rallies. Under Nkrumah leadership, Ghana adopted some social democratic policies and practices. Nkrumah created a welfare system, started various community programs, and established schools. Trouble began following a serious bus strike in Accra stemmed from resentments among the GA people, who believed members of other tribe were getting preferential treatments in government promotion, and this led to riots there in August. Nkrumah's response was to repress local movements by the Avoidance of Discrimination Act December 6, 1957, which banned regional or tribal-based political parties. Another strike at tribalism fell in Ashanti, where Nkrumah and the CPP got most local chiefs, who were not party supporters, distilled. These repressive actions concerned the opposition parties, who came together to form the United Party under Kofi Abrefa-Bija. Nkrumah was convinced there had been an assassination plot against him, and his response was to have the Parliament pass the Preventive Detention Act, allowing for incarceration for up to 5 years without charge or trial, with only Nkrumah empowered to release prisoners early. According to Nkrumah's biographer, David Birmingham, no single measure did more to bring down Nkrumah's reputation than his adoption of internment without trials for the preservation of security. Nkrumah intended to bypass the British-trained judiciary, which he saw as opposing his plans when they suggested them to constitutional scrutiny. On March 6, 1960, Nkrumah announced plans for a new constitution that would make Ghana a republic, headed by a president with broad executive and legislative powers. On 1923 and April 27, 1960, a presidential election and plebiscite on the constitution were held. He was elected president over J.B. Dankwa, the UP candidate. Nkrumah also sought to eliminate tribalism, because he felt natives were more loyal to their tribes than the country. Hence he started a campaign calling for the unity of not just Ghanaians, but for Africa to unite. In 1958 his government passed an act to prohibit organizations using or engaging in racial or religious propaganda to the detriment of any other racial or religious community, or securing the election of persons on account of their racial or religious affiliation. Kofi Abrefa-Bija of the United Party gained prominence as an opposition leader in the debate over this act, criticizing the ban on tribal politics as repressive. In 1962, 3 younger members of the CPP were brought up on charges of taking part in a plot to blow up Nkrumah's car in a motorcade. The sole evidence against the alleged plotters was that they rode in cars well behind Nkrumah's car. When the defendants were acquitted, Nkrumah sacked the chief judge of the state's security court, then got the CPP-dominated parliament to pass a law allowing a new trial. At this second trial, all 3 men were convicted and sentenced to death, though these sentences were subsequently commuted to life imprisonment. Shortly afterwards the Constitution was amended to give the President the power to summarily remove judges at all levels. In 1964, Nkrumah proposed a constitutional amendment that would make the CPP the only legal party. With Nkrumah as president for life of both nation and party, the amendment passed with 99.91% of the vote as obviously rigged. Ghana had effectively been a one-party state since independence. The amendment transformed Nkrumah's presidency into a de facto legal dictatorship. Despite that, his CPP party made changes in the educational system, creating the Accelerated Development Plan for Education. This plan set up a 6-year primary course for children to learn arithmetic, as well as gain a sound foundation for citizenship with permanent literacy in both English and the vernacular. Primary education became compulsory in 1962. In 1961, Nkrumah laid the first stones in the foundation of the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute created to train Ghanaian civil servants as well as promote Pan-Africanism. In 1964, all students entering college in Ghana were required to attend a 2-week ideological orientation at the institute. Nkrumah remarked that trainees should be made to realize the party's ideology is religion, and should be practiced faithfully and fervently. Nkrumah was an ardent promoter of Pan-Africanism, seeing the movement as the quest for regional integration of the whole of the Africa continent. The period of Nkrumah's active political involvement has been described as the golden age of high Pan-Africa ambition. The continent began experiencing rising nationalist movements and decolonization by most European colonial powers. Reflecting his Africa heritage, Nkrumah frequently eschewed Western fashion, donning a fugu and northern attire made with southern-produced Kent cloth, a symbol of his identity as a representative of the entire country. He oversaw the opening of Ghana Museum 0 on March 5, 1957, the Arts Council of Ghana, a wing of the Ministry of Education and Culture. In 1962, Nkrumah opened the Institute of African Studies. In 1960, laws was passed down by Nkrumah designated special positions in Parliament to be held by women. Some women were promoted to the CPP Central Committee. Women attended more universities, took up more professions including medicine and law. Nkrumah also encouraged women to join the armed forces, notably the Army and Air Force. Nkrumah's image was widely disseminated, for example on postage stamps and on money, in the style of a monarch's. Nkrumah created a well-funded Ghana New Agency to generate domestic news and disseminate it abroad. Nkrumah also consolidated state control over newspapers, establishing the Ghanaian Times in 1958, and then in 1962 obtaining its competitor, the Daily Graphic, from the Mirror Group of London. The Gold Coast had been among the wealthiest and most socially advanced areas in Africa, with school, railways, hospitals, social security, and advanced economy. Nkrumah attempted to rapidly industrialize Ghana's economy. His plans was if Ghana escaped the colonial trade system by reducing dependence on foreign capital technology and materials good, it could become truly independent. After visiting the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe and China in 1961, Nkrumah apparently became more convinced of the need for state control of the economy. His time spent in political office, he began successfully forestry, fishing, and cattle breeding expanded, production of cocoa, Ghana's main export, doubled, and modest deposits of bauxite and gold were exploited more effectively. Nkrumah was instrumental in the creation of the OAU, the Africa Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia in 1963. He aspired to create a united military force. In February 1966, while Nkrumah was on a state visit to North Vietnam and China, his government was overthrown in a violent coup d'état led by the national military and police forces, with backing from the civil service. The conspirators, led by Joseph Arthur Anker, named themselves the National Liberation Council and ruled as military government for 3 years. Nkrumah had no knowledge of the coup until he arrived in China. After the coup, Nkrumah stayed in Beijing for 4 days, and Premier Zhou Enlai treated him with courtesy. Nkrumah alluded to America's involvement in the coup in his 1969 memoir Dark Days in Ghana. Nkrumah married Fathia Rizk, an opportunity Egyptian Coptic bank worker and former teacher, in 1958. They had 3 children. After the coup against him, he lived in Conakry, Guinea until his death. Nkrumah died on April 27, 1972 in Bucharest, Romania, of an unknown but apparently incurable sickness.